All right, so maybe you're new into crypto and you're thinking, what should I do? What's the strategy I should take? Is it volatile right now? Is right now the time to jump in? Should I step back? So many questions, so many questions. Well, today we're going to dive into that. My name is Paul Barron. This is TechPath. Welcome back to the show. We're going to dive in to this very topic with someone that we actually connected with on Twitter. And you guys know, we talk to a lot of people on Twitter. It's an ongoing conversation out there, so make sure and follow us just at TechPath TV, and of course me, you can hit me up on at Paul Barron. But Olivia Lovenmark is a crypto investor and also works in the space. I want to welcome you to the show, Olivia. Great to have you.
Hi, great to be here. Thanks for having me.
All right, so you're doing something kind of cool around new investors education, and I want to dive into that. But before we get started, I want to learn a little bit about quickly on Prime Trust. I found out you are involved with Prime Trust. That's obviously a huge opportunity in the crypto space. Tell me a little bit what Prime Trust does and what you do for them.
Sure. So I'm a content lead with Prime Trust, which means that I write all of the content that you see that explains aspects of the industry and what the company is focused on. Prime Trust provides financial infrastructure. It's all-in-one APIs for fintech companies. So anyone who wants to engage, connect to crypto, digital assets, Prime Trust is your all-in-one solution for that. So the company actually powers a lot of platforms that you see in crypto. So it's a great time to be with them and to be growing in the industry.
Very cool. I had a chance to go to the Bitcoin 21 conference here in Miami, and it was pretty interesting. I saw a ton of companies, and I think I remember seeing Prime Trust there as well. Yeah. But I saw a ton of companies down there. I was amazed at the amount of technology that has advanced just in the past couple of years, especially around blockchain and NFT, and kind of where that growth is going. So very cool to see all that movement. But today I want to dive into the topic of educating the new crypto investor. So right now, if you're maybe you're an OG out there and you guys are already, maybe this isn't the episode for you, but if you are new to crypto, I wanted to kind of dive into what Olivia is doing and tell me a little bit about how you are going about educating new investors in the cryptocurrency category.
Yeah, I did something that I think now in hindsight seems pretty simple, but also kind of flipped the game on how I found that women would perceive an opportunity to learn about cryptocurrency. I basically just said I'm going to give up 2 hours a week, and I'm going to say, like, you can come and chat with me one-on-one. I don't need to know who you are. It doesn't matter where you live. Let's just have a chat. What I realized is not only do I have 5 years in crypto, and so I've accumulated a lot of knowledge in this space that I wanted a chance to share, but more so that when it comes to learning about crypto, it can be a really intimidating space. The technicalities are pretty intense. It's pretty deep, and it can take a long time to build that understanding. And if you don't have someone that you feel that you can comfortably ask questions to, you might shy away from jumping in. And especially if you're looking at crypto publications that just sort of speak in jargon and sort of assume that you have a base level, that can be really intimidating. And so I just wanted to create a relaxed, easy, relatable, comfortable environment for people, especially young women who want to get interested in crypto and want someone to talk to.
Very cool. So you've jumped in with basically offering up your time, kind of focused in on the new investor. What has been your findings so far? What have you seen out there in the marketplace?
In terms of the types of people who have been chatting with and investors, well, one of the interesting things is that crypto is a really intense and I would say wide-reaching space, right? And so what we hear in the mainstream is a lot of chat about Bitcoin. We hear a lot of chat about NFTs. But there's so much to understand about why the technology is exciting and why it's innovative and why it's interesting. And so there are a lot of people who are coming to me who are like, how do I even get started? They have no idea where to begin. Why is Bitcoin interesting? But then there are people who say, I actually own some Bitcoin, I own some ETH, I know a bit about this and that, but I have no idea why. I don't understand how the blockchain works. I don't understand why this is revolutionary, why this is going to change the financial space. And so I have a gamut of people that I've been able to chat with and I think help in a way because the space is so deep. There's so much to talk about. There's so much to learn.
All right. So for the new investor, when you look at some of the first things, and we get a lot of them on our own channel, in the comments here on our show, as well as on Twitter, And what I've found is a kind of this misnomer that crypto has this dark side to it.
Yeah.
And it's I look at it like anything. It's, when you think about the financial system, the monetary system overall, listen, there's ways that people use things for both good and bad. I think people are overblowing the whole scenario of the dark side of crypto. When you see that with a new crypto investor, how do you approach that where someone says, hey, it's crypto's for criminals kind of thing?
Yep.
What is the approach that you take to kind of offset that?
It's a great question, and particularly for me, because a lot of my friends have had that viewpoint, who aren't engaged in crypto. And so they only hear what the mainstream media has focused on over the past several years. And
Right.
exactly to your point, they have focused on the negative side because it's been, I don't know, clickbaity or more exciting. The first thing I say is that consider what fiat cash, so what your paper cash can do. Consider that you can't track cash. You can't track a piece like a bill. And then that turns a light bulb on for most people. And then I say, cryptocurrencies were initially used, and of course can still be, but maybe a little bit more prevalent at the outset on the black market or being used for things that were illicit, because of the concept and the reality that you can be anonymous when you transact with cryptocurrencies. What I then try to explain to people is that the blockchain is a public and it's a transparent ledger. So you can track transactions that are happening. And fortunately or unfortunately, depending on which side you're on, not all criminals are, maybe truly understanding how this transparent ledger works. And so if you use the same crypto wallet to make transactions, a pattern will emerge. And the FBI have already made it clear that they're actually quite big fans of Bitcoin and blockchain technology because of this, and have found, they've been able to name some folks who were using Bitcoin for not great reasons. So I try to explain that to people, and that totally turns the light bulb on for them, and they realize, like, okay, so these are the elements that the media has focused on, and it's not the whole picture, and that money is used from fiat currency is used for money laundering every day. So it's not one or the other. I think people are going to use whatever type of payment method they can to do whatever they want to do. It's just sort of human nature, but crypto is so much more than that.
Yeah, for sure. And interesting you say that, because the JBL ransomware attack, along with the power, should say the fuel control center here on the east coast of the U.S. The FBI actually just reported that they were able to freeze crypto assets. And mainly because they were able to track it down. So if that had been done in cash, that was gone in the wind.
Yeah.
Where this route, they actually were able to catch people that were doing nefarious and enabled them to essentially track down the bad guys. So I find that that's usually a non-argument very quickly. And like you, it's usually they start to, the light does come on and they're starting to think, see, now digital is. And because they understand, kind of how social media works and the ability for Facebook to know a little bit about everything you're doing, mainly because you're sharing that information publicly. So that in itself. Now, I want to talk about when you look at some of the challenges that a new crypto investor faces, the first steps that they need to take. Kind of walk us through, and I know for a lot of you watching right now, maybe this is very basic, but we want to kind of help the new investor understand really the steps they can take to kind of jump into the space, and maybe talk about when is a good time to enter. What are your thoughts on that?
The second part of the question makes me laugh because, it's my opinion, and I think, frankly, kind of any time is a good time depending on what you're aiming to do. I think that in the past year, it's become more easy than it ever has. It's become maybe easy just generally to enter crypto, and that's because the UX has improved so much for various products and services. So even in cryptocurrency exchanges, the design element, the part that the user engages with on the front end, has improved so much that it's become much almost as easy as using Amazon or something to go onto a cryptocurrency exchange and be able to purchase. I think the one thing that people might get tripped up in or confused with is the KYC AML process, which is just the compliance process that you go through as an investor. But I think that the process has become, particularly on the the really big exchanges like Coinbase, like Binance, OKCoin, These exchanges, I think, understand the importance of a smooth onboarding process, and have made it such. So I think it's actually a lot easier than it used to be. It's just a case of identifying, what do I want to buy, what do I want to invest in, and why, and what are my goals, and what are my objectives. And my personal viewpoint on investing, and again, it's just my opinion, is that when the market's down, it's your time to go in. I mean, to me, I personally view that as assets are on sale, it's time to go. I believe in crypto for the long run, so it's sort of always a good time to add, especially if you're going to dollar cost average. But I would say when the market dips, it's a good opportunity to get in.
Yeah, and of course, filming this, Bitcoin's hovering around 30, 35. Actually, no, we're down to around 32 today, right? Is that right on the produce? 31, just hit 31. Wow, so great opportunity for those. And of course, that's about 50% on the correction for our all-time high this year. So definitely a different time in which, because accumulation, as many people in the crypto space already know, accumulation is really where wealth is made. And anybody that is looking at investing and whether you're putting it in crypto or in stocks or anything, buying at the bottom is definitely the way to go. Whether I mean, Warren Buffett's made a career on this: buy low, sell high. It's not rocket science here. All right, so the point being is that you can sign up to an exchange fairly easily, whether it's something like Coinbase, which has obviously went public this year. Very easy to onboard. Do you find new investors taking a look at some of the more complicated trading platforms like a Coinbase Pro, or maybe going over somewhere like a Kraken, or somewhere that they can get access to other coins other than, say, those top 10 premium digital assets? What are your findings so far on people wading out into the more external waters?
Actually, I sort of would want to dissuade people from doing that personally, just in the conversations that I've had, and I'm speaking to the experiences that in the actual conversations that I've had, because I think that it's a step-by-step process. I think that you want to get comfortable with the basics before you jump in too far. Some of the, this isn't exactly crypto related, but there were some stories, that came out around Robinhood and inexperienced investors who were using their platform and didn't quite understand what they were getting into, and misunderstood, what their positions were, which was obviously quite very detrimental and tragic in some cases. And so what I like to tell people is, let's just start with the basics. Understand what you're going to buy and why. What are your objectives? What are your sell points? Like, are you going to, when you hit this point, are you going to sell a percentage of your position off? Are you going to hold for the long term? Once you can build up a portfolio and understand why you're holding 4, 5, 6 assets, then maybe after some time, after you're comfortable with trading that, then you want to look at the next stage. But, Coinbase has a ton of selection. Even OKCoin has, I think, at least 20 assets now. So even for someone who's like a mid-level investor, I feel like you've got a lot of options there.
Yeah, for sure. I like all the options, and it seems like everything's growing, of course, with Coinbase offering a Doge. Let me just ask you that. What are your thoughts, and do you give any kind of pointers when you look at these meme coins and these external altcoins? What are your thoughts on going down that route for investment?
Yeah, totally. I'm a fan. I think that each project has merit for its own reasons. I think that Dogecoin is a proof point that the people will, put value behind something that they believe in. It doesn't have to match up with, historical fundamentals of assets. And I think that's really cool. And I think that's so classic for crypto. But I think you really have to know why you're buying what you're buying, so you can have an understanding. That said, when the market is going up, I think a rising tide floats all boats in a way. And so you kind of get to follow that ride with Bitcoin if there's a big push behind Bitcoin. No, but I'm a fan for sure. I think, one asset that I think is really interesting is Tron, for example. They're looking to be
doing great, by the way. Wow.
Yeah, totally. So I think you just have to keep your eyes open. I think you have to do your own research all the time. You can't take someone's opinion for it. I think you need to look into the asset yourself and understand why it's doing what it's doing. But yeah, I think there's opportunities across the board.
What are your thoughts? Okay, so ESG has kind of become a buzzword now here recently, especially with Cathie Wood and kind of her position of where ARK investment is. And anybody that's looking into investment right now, they've probably run across a lot of stories around Cathie Wood and ARK and kind of what they are all about. But obviously, I think everybody knows the Elon saga that's unfolding before us right now in cryptocurrency. And the whole idea of whether or not Bitcoin is sustainable, and you've got arguments both for and against. For an average investor or a new investor, they're looking at this maybe for the first time. They don't understand necessarily kind of the backstory of what crypto mining is without going into the complexity of crypto mining and what kind of impact that has. How do you answer that question? Is crypto good for the environment?
Yes, this age-old question. I feel like it's been something we've been talking about for many years now. And I found it really surprising that that came up and that that became an issue again. But I think, and I don't know this for certain, but from what I've gathered, the bits that I've read, it seems that Elon had a motive in saying that, and that perhaps his company had received subsidies. That, and so it encouraged him to say that Bitcoin wasn't a good idea because holding that much Bitcoin wasn't good for how that served his business. Now, I don't know exactly the details, but it seemed like he said it for reasons other than the truth about Bitcoin and its sustainability. Mining does require power. That is just how it works. But this isn't worse than many other industries that we have out there. I think that one of the key things to look at, and it's something that I bring up with people who are new to crypto or new to Bitcoin, is that you have to look at what the traditional finance space, what their footprint is, and how, in contrast, unsustainable that can be. You look at the literal physical footprint of banks and the spaces, the amount of people, the amount of emissions that are being put into the air with people commuting to work at banks. And so you just have to look at the industries fairly, I think, if you're going to make that argument. I also think that there have been a lot of new technologies and like scaling solutions that are helping to decrease the cost and decrease the level of energy that's being consumed. So, and like with anything in technology, it's only going to get more efficient with time. So that argument becomes less and less powerful. But again, you contrast it to traditional finance and banks and the printing of money. It takes a lot of energy as well.
Sure. Well, I think if you look at the crypto miners, they're essentially trying to go where the cheapest energy is in the world. That has been recently, it's been China. Obviously, there's been some clampdowns on how China is approaching cryptocurrency, which I always say back, could actually be a really good thing for both the US and some of the more Western countries and the cryptocurrency mining markets, because this could really advance the acceleration of using renewables, because renewables, we don't have that kind of scenario, at least here in the US. Gaining access to massive coal reserves are just not what you would see here in the US, where solar and wind are becoming more and more ubiquitous of being able to have access to, and then you have companies like Tesla and many others that are kind of going this direction. I foresee this really kind of becoming a boon for renewable energy down the road as crypto mining continues to accelerate. So that's going to be fun to watch. Okay, so let's get into NFTs, because this is one that, at least for me, I get this question more than any, is what is it? What is a non-fungible token?
Yep.
What does that even mean? But really, to the extent of what can I do with it, and is it really an investment vehicle that I should be paying attention to as a new crypto investor? What are you saying there?
For the new folks, I would say have some caution. I would say that, like anything, crypto has cycles, and crypto has really hot cycles. And so you have to be careful what you get caught up in if you aren't savvy, right? If you aren't comfortable with the space and haven't been in it for some time and can sort of navigate these cycles. I think we saw exactly that in the past, we'll call it 5 or 6 months, where we saw a frenzy around NFTs. What the mainstream is identifying as NFTs is typically like digital art. That's been the main focus. But NFTs are any tokenized asset, that's just unique. Whereas Bitcoin is one-to-one. An NFT could be tokenized real estate. It could definitely be art. It could be a moment, like on social media, people are tokenizing their tweets. It could really be anything that's a unique asset. And so I think there's absolutely opportunity there. And I think the opportunities with NFTs are only going to increase because it's such a natural next step within crypto. And we're going to see, even greater sophistication around these assets. So yes, I definitely think there's going to be opportunity there. I think the current state of opportunity is volatile. And I think that investors should be careful. I think it could be really fun. I think, go ahead and try and mint an NFT if you're interested on a platform like Rarible or something like that. It's actually quite easy to do. Try to buy and sell it if you're interested in it. But I would just preface it by saying, spend what you are okay with losing, because there's no proof point that these assets are going to hold value over the long term.
Yeah. Okay, so I like so kind of a little bit bearish on NFTs, and I think for the new investor, you have to just be cautious. That's the main thing.
Yeah.
Versus if you look at some of the core cryptocurrencies and the core blockchain projects that are out there, whether it's Ethereum or Cardano or something like that, those are a little bit more mainstream, easier to get your head around in terms of where that direction is going. Talk to me about what you're seeing because this is another category. I think a lot of people look at Bitcoin as obviously being the alpha in the space right now, though we are seeing a lot of trading volume coming at us right now in Ethereum. Kind of your thoughts on where Ethereum is going with the potential for new investors and how Cardano and or maybe a Polkadot or something like that could kind of jockey into position for new investors' first altcoin purchases. What are your thoughts on those?
I think that as an investment opportunity, like they're kind of I would just review them as I would an asset. I think that there's opportunity across the board. They have a similar end goal, but are doing it in different ways. I think that Ethereum has the first mover advantage. It has the most adoption. It's the most used blockchain today. And I think that it offers. They are looking at offering a better way. They're in the process of offering a better scaling solution, so that it costs a lot in terms of gas for using it, so that transactions are faster, etc. So I think Ethereum is here for the long term. I think that, as you mentioned, there are others that are in the wings, like ready to take their place. I think they're all awesome opportunities at this point. I think we're still so early in the space that what's coming out today and getting a hold in the market is likely going to be around for a long time. You can't promise that. But I think we're still so early that it's not one or the other. It's going to be a variety of these types of chains.
Right. All right, so if you are you pro altcoin right now for a new investor? Do you think, hey, yeah, you should probably maybe take a certain percentage of your portfolio if you're going to, put aside X amount in cryptocurrency, X amount of that should be altcoins? What do you yes or pro or not?
I think altcoins, sometimes people equate altcoins with shitcoins, which I think is a bit unfortunate. Obviously, there's like thousands of tokens out there that some are probably not worth a new investor's time. But I think that, in my personal opinion, that Bitcoin should hold somewhat of a place of prominence in your portfolio. But also, there's absolutely a place for altcoins in there. There's so many interesting things that projects are doing today that I think you want to diversify and give yourself exposure to those new technologies. Absolutely.
Yeah. Olivia, so new investors are always looking for places to garner information, education, kind of that whole process. What other places are you pointing investors to? I mean, obviously YouTube is a treasure trove of information by some experts, and then there's a lot of charlatans out there as well. But how do you get a new investor to be able to tell the difference? Because there are very clear delineations here on where good education is coming from.
Yeah, you're right, and it's hard to tell, frankly, right? Like yesterday, for example, I saw a tweet. I think it was from Nathaniel. Forgive me, one of the podcast hosts for CoinDesk, NLW, I believe his acronym is, and or his monogram, anyways. And anyways, he tweeted about the anonymous group coming out and saying why Elon was wrong in saying that Bitcoin wasn't sustainable. And then there was, if you read the comments, people are calling out that video saying, well, this is incorrect, this is incorrect, this is incorrect. And so that was I think a really good example, because when I first saw that, I was like, oh, that's interesting, I should watch that. And I've been in this industry for a long time. I think that you have to take sometimes what you read at face value. If you want to be able to trust what you're reading, go to sources that are reputable. CoinDesk and The Block have really emerged as reputable sources, so I absolutely guide people to go there. I think that crypto Twitter is a great place to find out what's new and what's the latest and the trend, and find out where the sentiment of the market is. Crypto Twitter is by far and away, in my opinion, the best place to sort of figure out market sentiment. There's a few key people there that really seem to have a good finger on the pulse. But I mean, more than with traditional finance, I think you really have to do your own research. And if you're going to jump into crypto, be willing to do your own research, because there's a lot of people who are going to promote what they want to promote, and you've got to be wary of that.
Yeah, and you're right. In any kind of investment strategy, whether it's even if you go to Wall Street, often I always look at some of the top analysts. It's interesting. I'm curious. I'm hoping that we get an analyst scorecard, much like what we see in the analysts that basically run on Wall Street right now, to where we could get a scorecard on analysts in the crypto space to kind of look at their measurements and performances over time. Because I think that's going to help young investors, new investors, especially people as this market matures and kind of goes to the next level for sure. And especially like you're saying, the news opportunities, I mean, just like what we do here on TechPath, I mean, the amount of research that we pour into it, we're not, a typical YouTuber. We have a full studio where we've got researchers, producers that are fact checking everything and double checking and triple checking because we're scared of always making a mistake. So I think if you can get into places that feel more like they've put a lot into understanding where the space is going, it's very valuable. So on the education side, NFTs, I like that, cautious, bearish, not necessarily totally bullish, but going into any other steps that you would say for a new investor, educate yourself. Are there any specific books, podcasts, or other areas that you might say, you guys should probably check these out because this could help you prep for getting into investing?
Yeah, I get that question a lot. I know there are plenty of great podcasts and books out there, but I haven't readily recommended those. For me, the best way to learn hasn't just been in a book because I think podcasts are more timely. Books can be topical at the time, but crypto changes really quickly. I encourage people to jump into the conversation. And I don't mean like necessarily having to participate, but jump into to staying on the pulse of what's going on. And that's sort of the best way to stay afloat. So I actually haven't made a habit of recommending sources like that. And not that I think they're bad. I tend to prefer spending my time.
You need a lot more real time. Yeah, you
I
need
like
a
the
lot
real
more real
time.
time.
I do. And, I mean, that's my bias.
Yeah.
But and I think with podcasts, I think it can be hard to find a middle ground for someone who's new because there's going to be sort of like the crypto native folks who are going to go deep into the analysis and it's going to go over some people's heads, and then you're going to have the ones that go more mainstream in their analysis and sometimes miss out on important factors of the industry and sort of cling to a mainstream narrative. And so I'm not saying there isn't a good fit there in that space. Of course there is, like in your show is an example of that, I think. So I'm going to add that to my list of recommendations. But I do recommend that, there's a few folks that I think are good to follow, and it's good to get a vast array of opinions.
Sure. I think, well, that's going to be, I think, a space that when you just look, because like you mentioned, this is very early in the stage of, I always kind of compare this back to where the internet was in the 1990s. I was working for Microsoft at the time, and we basically kind of dispelled that the internet was even going to be a thing on record. On record, my boss at that time, Bill Gates, was like, "This is just a fad. Don't worry about it. It's not a."
No, he didn't.
Not anything.
Really?
Oh yeah, he's on record for. We missed it. I mean, Microsoft. Yeah, Microsoft missed, that's why Internet Explorer was so far behind Netscape at the time. Don't get me into that, it's another story at another time.
Fair.
But the point being is that these early adoption phases in technology can usually take, in the past, could take anywhere between 5 years and a decade. I feel like we are there because obviously, with Satoshi starting in 2008, here we are really seeing the second real cycle, 2017, now the second cycle. I mean, even though the 2013 cycle I would say was good, but there were just so few investors and few people that really got into to crypto at that time. But I feel like these last two bull runs have really kind of flushed out the investment community, and now we've seen traditional investment strategies and companies really kind of moving in this direction. With all of this happening, do you feel like this is the time that we should see a lot more education for the new investor? Because I feel like we're getting ready to open the gates here for potentially the next real run, which is in 2024. Thoughts on that?
And so when you say the next big run, do you mean like the next big bull market?
Right. Once we get through this one, which we just had the halvening of Bitcoin, and I don't want to get too technical for how that works, but that's one thing you should check into of understanding the cycles of Bitcoin.
I see what
And
you're saying.
the cycles apply to education and the new entry of new investors, which typically draw them in during these cycles, which has kind of been the case here on this bull run, that we've seen a lot of new investors hit in. And I believe we even saw, I was listening to Pompliano just the other day where he was talking about a lot of the people who were selling in this correction were cryptocurrency holders that had very young wallets. So meaning they had not been holding crypto very long. So those are new investors. So if you look at that, the education cycle, I think, is going to be an absolute boom on new
Yep.
investors in the next 2 to 3 years. So I think your timing is perfect. So congrats to what you're doing for sure. All right. So any last tips for a new investor that you kind of say, hey, here's a couple potholes you should watch out for?
Yeah, volatility, but I say that in a good way. I don't mean that in like, be scared of it. Volatility
Right.
is not necessarily a bad thing, depending on what your objectives are. I think if you are willing to get into this space, I think that you need to understand that the assets are going to go up and down. You're going to have good days and bad days in your portfolio, but know what your objective is. Are you going to try to be a day trader? Are you going to try to catch those waves, or are you in it for the long run and then just let it ride, let it go, and don't worry about it. I think that to your point and what Popliana was talking about with a lot of the younger wallets and people selling, people got excited because there was a lot of mania and hype around Bitcoin and the price was only going up. And then it started to crash and they sold, which, in sort of classic investment wisdom is the wrong thing to do. You want to buy when they're crying and you sell when they're yelling. So I would say be mindful of the fact that crypto is volatile. It is new. There's still regulation being applied to the space. And it is still, these are small market caps that we're talking about in contrast to traditional asset classes. And that also lends itself to volatility. So understand that is a function of it, not necessarily a negative aspect of these assets. There's opportunity with volatility. But in the long term, if you believe in the technology, at least in my opinion, it's going to serve you well.
Yeah, for sure. I know that you are a young entrepreneur. You've started your own drink and beverage business. Have you got any plans to try to integrate cryptocurrency NFTs into how that might go forward in the future?
Yeah, absolutely. Actually, I was just talking with my partner the other day about whether or not we should start accepting crypto. Our target market is largely women, and I think, and I'll be frank, and this might be a bit of a controversial point, but I have seen less adoption within our target market of crypto than with men. At this point in our business, it doesn't make sense to include that. That's just an analysis that we did. It's not a comment on the sexes. But it's something that I'm definitely interested in the future. I think, why not? It's a method of payment. It's only increasing in interest and in use. So it's something we're definitely open to. Services like BTC Pay make that much easier than it ever was.
Right.
But yeah, we launched a premium bottled cocktail business that is growing quite healthily right now. It's been a really fun adventure.
What's the name of it? Duchess Cosmo or Cosmo Duchess? Which one is it?
Yeah. So our product that we launched is our first product. It's called Duchess Cosmo, and it's my take on a classic cosmopolitan. It's a 12% vodka bottled beverage, and we hope to launch in the U.S. either later this year or early next year. Right now, we're just in Canada.
Good for you. I like it. Is it a premix?
Yeah, it comes ready to drink.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yep. So RTD. Wow, we've had a few people. We have a sister network that works within our studio here, and one of our other platforms, which is Foodable Network. If you guys you should check it out. Foodable Network, just foodabletv.com. We cover a lot of those kind of topics. We probably need to talk to you about that for sure and get it on. I'd love to hear it. How far into the stage are you right now in terms of the product development?
Yeah, so the product development started the idea was conceived in June of 2019. We brought the product to market in December of 2020. We've just finished our third production run, and we're in the process of going up a bit of a hill right now with a massive scale. We're scaling a lot right now, which is exciting and nerve-wracking at the same time, but it's been amazing. The reception has been incredible for the product, more than we could have anticipated, which is, creates issues in your supply chain with, getting the bottles, and shipping right now is an absolute nightmare. Global shipping is horrible and not something I ever thought I'd know this much about. But it's been wonderful to create a product and have people connect to it and keep buying.
Yeah, I like it. Excellent. Olivia Lovenmark, great to have you on the show. Thank you so much for stopping in today. We really appreciate your time.
Thanks very much for having me. It was a pleasure.
All right, so you guys are maybe listening in over on the podcast side of things right now. Tune in. We love that. Make sure and subscribe and give us a few stars over there. Additionally, if you're watching right here on YouTube, hit the like button and also subscribe to the show. It's going to be how you're going to get more notifications on more content like what we're doing here on a day in, day out basis. And of course, if you have an idea for the show, just shoot it to us at producer@reverendnetworks.com. And of course, you can hit me up on Twitter @Paul Barron. We'll catch you next time right here on TechPath.